next, I think, if it's all right, we'll have Scott and Paul and Luke each come up and what we were going to do was to have, I got you guys screwed up right now, sorry, is have a couple of slides by each of the guys, and we'll just, with the overall net question was, are we winning or losing the battle, and what can we do next? And so maybe we'll just kind of come up here, Paul, Scott, and Luke, and then for no other reason, Scott, maybe we'll just start with you because you're first on the list here. And we'll just make our little presentations if the boys can get that hooked up. Need some water, Luke or Paul?
Okay.
All right. I'll use that one. I get the guys.
Okay, very good. I really appreciate the invitation from the Swine group to speak. I also appreciate the transparency and generosity of the Pipestone team to allow me to show this information. In my mind, and I'll back that up with data, we're winning. We know how to win. We have the formula, we have the knowledge, we have the tools we need to win. We just have to go get it done. And these two publications that came out this year justify that statement. So all the veterinarians ought to read these papers. All the producers ought to ask questions about these papers and get the information shared to them by their veterinarians. And so I don't like losing. Those numbers are terrible. We've got to do something different. And I think now we have a light at the end of the tunnel. Let me explain. What did we do at Pipestone? We developed a strategy called Next Generation Biosecurity, which is evidence-based biosecurity, where we take risk factors and we look at scientifically validated protocols to reduce those risks. And so we're actually using science in biosecurity, which is really not the case. Biosecurity has not had a great history of being a scientific process. It's getting a lot better. So we have certain routes of spread, direct routes and indirect routes, which have been validated as important risk factors. And we put together protocols across all of these routes in a comprehensive science-based approach. So direct routes are pigs and semen, obviously. We got to have negative pigs and semen. We got to test them. The mechanical routes are the fomite-based routes, transport, personnel entry, supplies. The aerosol route, we know what that is. We have filtration. And the feed route, we have mitigation. So the 4 pillars of next generation biosecurity are documented in this slide. So what did we do? How did we validate that? For the last 3 years, we've been conducting a study across the entire Pipestone system, looking to see whether this approach has any merit at all. So we conducted a 3-year retrospective cohort study across the company. You see the sample sizes we were dealing with. This is not a small backyard experiment. This is the second to third biggest company in the United States. So it's putting boots on the ground. What was interesting when we looked at the data retrospectively was we found 2 cohorts. A set of farms that we call NGB complete, which had all 4 of the pillars properly managed. They were doing everything they could as we outlined. There was a small subset of farms, a cohort called NGB incomplete, which was basically a full program without air filtration. So that was an interesting thing, that we wanted to see if there were differences there. But one thing that's really important to point out was there's no statistical difference in the area swine density between cohorts. So location didn't bias the outcome. What did we see? I only have a few minutes and I can get into more details during the questions, but I saw data that I'd never seen in the 37 years I've worked with this disease. PRRS incidence risk below 10%, specifically 8% average for the 3 consecutive years. So we took the incidence down from 40 to 50% over time. We held it below 10% for 3 consecutive years over that sample size of herds. There were no difference in the number of proportion of positive farms year by year, but there was a very high association, significant association of biosecurity level and PRRS infections. So the complete program was statistically better as far as reducing incidence than the incomplete program. The majority of the outbreaks which occurred in the system, because it's not a perfect system, as far as this whole thing isn't perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better where we were, and a lot of the breaks we saw were in the incomplete group, so we got to fix those. And talking to Adam Shelkoff, the health director, with this approach of next generation, there's simply less disease. This isn't just PRRS. This has an effect on multiple viruses. We had one PED positive farm last year. There was one Mycoplasma pneumoniae rebreak on an elimination, and there's a lot less influenza now. The elimination programs are much more successful. Talking to Barry Kirkart today from China, he's saying the same outcomes on African swine fever virus in the China herds when this approach is put in place. So there's a whole bunch of good stuff you get from doing this. It's also had some interesting effects on the KPIs in the breeding herd, and just to show you 2 years of data looking at a subset of complete and incomplete farms and some of the things we saw. You see the number 43 complete herds, 19 incomplete. Average parities farrowed is the same, that was good. Significantly higher total born incomplete, significantly lower pre-weaning mortality in incomplete. Pigs weaned per sow, significantly higher incomplete. Litters per sow per year, no difference, which was good. And although not statistically different, there was a 9/10 of a pig different per sow weaned per year in the complete farm, which you do the math on the number of sows in that cohort, that's 190,115 additional wean pigs that came out of that extra 9/10. So we got to do something. We cannot live with this disease. We have to make a transformational change, and now is the time to do it. We now understand the risk of area spread. We know how to stop area spread. We now can eliminate and prevent, which is something we've never been able to do before since the virus came on board. That was always a paradigm we were fighting. Yeah, I can eliminate the virus from the farm, but I'm always getting a new reinfection. That changes now. It's a new way of thinking come 2024, new paradigm. And we've documented this in peer-reviewed open access journals, so you can go access the complete paper and read it without any cost. All of us in this industry, and as well as other species groups, need to learn from this. We have all the knowledge and the tools we now need to mitigate the risk of PRRS infection in the breeding herd. There should be no excuse, there should be no obstacles now. Let's just go out and get this done. Thank you.
Any questions for Scott, or should we wait and do it?
Wait till the panel.
What would you like to do, Scott? We'll wait till the end. Okay. Next, who is on the list? Either. Yep. Luke.
Okay. I don't gonna go as much on detail as Scott did, and I will kind of cover to a different angle a little bit on that. I think that the good that we have done on the PRRS side is very easy to see. I mean, we have improved our diagnostic capacity and the speed and our information. We're doing better on PCR, we're doing better on sequencing, we're doing better with the lineage information, we're doing better with whole genome sequencing. I think we have improved dramatically our strategy to eliminate the virus from the sow farm. And as Scott said, I think we have improved our biosecurity at the sow farm level, and we're putting a lot of energy at that, and there's a lot of success showing that. The problem is that PRRS thrive in the U.S. production model. The system that's been developed in U.S. and some other area of the world is a multi-state system where pigs are moving to different regions. And although if you have your sow farms are clean, or if you have sow farms that suddenly break, you end up with a bunch of infected pigs that you have to move around the country. And that's where a lot of the issue I've dealt with in the past, and I still dealt with in Quebec, happen now, where you have negative farm getting positive, and then suddenly you have to deal with 3,000 pigs a week that you have to move into a system, and then you have the connect the dot situation there. And often in the past we have concentrated a lot on biosecurity, and we don't have concentrate on biocontainment, meaning that when we have infected pigs, we didn't really care where those pigs were going. And we didn't really control the route those pigs were taking and where we're putting them. So we often underestimate the damage of moving infected pig between different regions, and the receiving region, and what the pigs could do also in transit while they were moving as highly infectious animals. So what's the ugly is high pig density, low growth finish biosecurity. We have create region where farm pig, where multiple strains circulate at the same time, and we've seen appearance of those new highly pathogenic strain, and the new recombinant are more pathogenic and more transmissible. Can we do something? Yes, I think we can do something, but I think some of the easy stuff has been done. Some of the stuff that continue to do, we need to continue to do what we're doing, but I think there's other steps that now to be happening. And I think a lot of it need to start focusing on biocontainment, where infected pigs are going in those regions, what are the route they're taking, and then we have to start thinking of regionalization of infected flow, which that means that we start to need to talk to each other, which means that you start to thinking not when something happened, because all the time I got the call from a producer, now I got positive pigs, oh, I cannot move them there. Do you think that we could make a site swipe or something like that coming from the negative side? And I always say, those guys, those discussions, we cannot have them in time of war. We need to have those discussions at time of peace. We need to start discussing about developing flow of integrated flow to protect region and to minimize the movement of virus between large regions that can create those situations. You can. When people said, how do you eat an elephant? The spoon at a time. That's a big task, but we have to start with small area. You have to look at area where it's easy to do and start to make those small regions a success and start expanding that. We have seen some success in Quebec with regional control by creating what we call mini region that were suitable to do that and having people talking and agreeing on how we're going to make those flow work. And then increase testing of pig movement to low prevalence region. If you have a region that is clean, the pigs that need the black swan effect that I've seen in Colorado and our other region were of movement of pigs that were thinking were negative, but once they came in infected region, the virus was there. So when you move pigs to low prevalence, you got to be sure that those pigs are negative. And then you have to communicate, create plan, discuss, and you cannot do it on your own. The main thing right now is reaching a point that we really need to do that proactively, everybody together. And I think we can make gain. I think it's a long battle, but we can win it. But we need to start doing the hard stuff and sitting everybody at the table and discuss about it.
All right. Well, there won't, being the last speaker, it's always a little bit more challenging. A lot's already been covered. So, again, I put this slide up again just to show that I think one of the challenges for the industry is today you can see we have more farms that are continuing to stay in Category 1. And that's not helping us with a virus from overall standpoint. There's more virus available. There's more opportunity for the virus because we've kept more herds in that status. And if you look at the SDRS over the years, the last 5 to 6 years, you can see that that trend just continues to move up. It's certainly cyclical during the year following the seasonal patterns as we discussed before, but you can see that that's on an upward movement. And just like we talked before, if you look at that wean to finish and that area of regional control, the wean to finish is our next area we have to focus on. Because we see the wean to finish go up and then we see the sow farms follow a couple of months later. And as I said already before, we're seeing the wean to finish go up. The sows are still sitting good. So I use this as a project we did with Jose Anglo and looking at a small region, and we had sow farms, nurseries, and grow finish barns all together. And certainly we know there's some regional and area spread. And because we were monitoring those sites, we could see that the viruses came in well ahead in the wean to finish, and then they showed up in the sow farms over time. And so again, I think that's our opportunity as we move forward, is to start to work on these regions. As Luke said, working on biocontainment, I think, is critical, and working together as a group to work on these regions and move forward after that. And with that, Mike, we can go to the questions.
Thank you, Paul and Luke and Scott. I think to that, together with Henry's presentation and certainly Kim's showing us how to look at this differently, present us with a pretty good roadmap to say, you know, if the fundamental question is why do we continue to battle, I think we got some good presentations that have put that together as what we need to do next. So do we have any questions that you'd want answered specifically?
Sarah Mikesell with the Pig Site. Scott, I just want to say hoorah after you said your thing, because I love your enthusiasm. And I'm curious, I know you laid out the pillars, but what specifically do you feel like farms are not doing right now that they need to do to really cross over this threshold?
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. What are farms not doing? I think overall most systems have a pretty good handle on the direct routes. And thanks to the great breeding stock companies we have where they've cleaned up their pyramids, first led by PIC back around 2000, so a lot of credit. The issue of infected animals and semen is not as high as it was in the past. I think there's some pretty good mechanical biosecurity being looked at in the industry, at least at the sow herd level, where there's effect on trucks, there's shower in, shower out, there's supply entry. I think where we start to separate is when we get into air filtration, yes or no, and feed mitigation, yes or no. The feed mitigation is a recent discovery, so that information is probably still getting out there. But the power of the air filtration is amazing. And you look at the complete and the incomplete farms, and you look at that paper over 3 consecutive years, the vast majority of the outbreaks were in the incomplete farms. So to me, that's one area, and I know there's a lot of good work looking at different technologies and maybe try to get it, you can do it in more than one way, for example. That's the missing piece, and that's so effective based on the data. That's the one that needs to get plugged, because this is clearly an airborne virus.
Luke, you spoke about biocontainment, and obviously we all recognize that few people want to euthanize pigs, right? Just because they happen to be contaminated with PRRS, right? Few people want to eliminate a population, but is that possibly necessarily the ultimate step? Is compensating producers to eliminate this production rather than just move it someplace else?
Thank you for the question. It's opening a big can of worm compared to, because if you're talking about PRRS, it's not like a PED infection where you can basically control it in a matter of 4 weeks of production. You got pigs that are going to be infected for a very long period of time. We even have those discussions in Quebec or Canada because we don't have any of that line 1C virus, and we have said, okay, if that virus showed up, what we will do. And the problem is, are you able to detect it in time? And what it happened, what do you do with everything that is in the production? I think more importantly in some of those is because you will not have the government moving from an endemic disease decided to put money in that. Unless producer decide to put it there, it will not happen. But if you say, okay, if we got a system design and you plan that, okay, if I got an infected flow, this is how we're gonna manage it. This is where you're gonna go. But there's an element of what route those pigs will take and not go close to other farms. We have, and you don't want to create region where you're gonna put all your infected pigs together, because I think it's a little bit of what you see in Iowa, and that's a little bit of why you see those new virus appearing, because you have too much variation of virus in those areas. But you have to find within a flow, can I regionalize it and keep it there so I don't get those spread from region to region. The problem is a lot of systems have been built basically as multi-state production rather than 3-site. So when I look at like Western Canada, we've seen introduction of virus, but they've been very easy to contain because they were 3-site on site or they were finish farm. So there was no pigs that were moving from different region. And when we tested finisher pigs going to market, I've done quite a bit of that just to protect specific region, and very, very rarely will you find late finisher pig being positive with virus, where weaned pigs and feeder pigs are usually shedding a high level of virus. So those movements, you have to be a little bit more concerned. But you've got to make those plans now. You got to plan about it now. You got to develop those flow now, because when a farm's going to get positive, you start talking about those things, it's already too late. So you got to put them in place, but I don't think that you will have anybody that will be willing to do a mass elimination for positive farm, not at the point that we are right now.
And we've had some herds that have made agreements to test within a region. If you have a sensitive site like a sow farm, you may test a ring around those sensitive areas, and the agreement is you're going to relocate those pigs or do something with those pigs. Again, we still got to move them somewhere, but or come up with the money to get rid of them. But at least having a plan in place, and I think Daryl Holtkamp brought this up to me a number of years ago as the L1C5 started moving within our industry. Is we've done a very poor job on biocontainment, and particularly on the wean to finish side, and that's probably our biggest opportunity as an industry, is to make sure we're doing a better job there and coordinating that flow. One slide I wish I would have put in was we have an AgView account where we have various producers that are sharing data, and when you look at the movement of pigs in the last 30 days, it looks like you sneezed on the screen, and you really can't discern where they went. And that's part of the issue, and I agree with Luke, we probably need to have a more proactive approach to that as an industry of, how are we going to work to control that in the long pull?
Okay, and then I have a question for Scott as well, if I may. Scott, I really appreciate the enthusiasm you bring to the issue you have for many, many years, right? And that's awesome. Particularly, I think part of your stress was on the filtering, which has been a long time in development as well. It's interesting, one of the previous presenters, I think, talked about 40 years now that we've been dealing with PRRS. And I've been privy to watching, participating in the industry over those 40 years. And it's interesting, I noted most recently, Montana has been a particular beneficiary, as I see it, of the latest in a long trend of moving the sows out of Iowa, right? So 40 years ago, we moved them first to North Carolina, and then to Minnesota, and then to Oklahoma, and Manitoba, and then South Dakota, and then eventually all those places got kind of crowded, so we just keep on moving further out. Is that still necessarily part of the strategy of elimination from industry as well as not only coordinating the flow, but maybe strategically placing the sows and focusing on where to keep the sows healthy, but yet have the pigs come back to where the corn and the packing plants are? And how do you see that developing over time?
Yeah, great, Brad, as always, good thinking. For sure, you can filter by distance, and a lot of that is done early on, but as we've seen, oftentimes that changes when finishing barns are built closer and closer and closer to those sow farms, and pretty soon they're not as isolated as you would hope they'd be. But the good news is, with what we know now in regards to area spread, that's not going to matter anymore. We can keep the virus out of these breeding herds, and the farms I shared with you briefly, they're in very dense regions. We always filter the farms that are in the worst regions, for obviously. So these aren't out in the sticks anywhere getting biased, and we showed that with the scoring of the area density. There was no difference between the complete and incomplete group. And so the area density didn't influence the outcome. But to me, what's exciting is we know how to stop area spread. And I've been working on this for over 20 years, and there's always been, yeah, we can eliminate it, but we're going to get right infected again. And that was true. That's a true statement. Not anymore. It's a whole new paradigm, and that excuse will not work, in my opinion, anymore. So thanks.
We have any other? Gordy, Ron, Did we cover the main things that people want to know of why we're battling and what we should be doing? I think we had a good, here, Gordy. Yep.
Well, thanks. Thank you to all the presenters. I think when you have a presentation just previous to this that says that we have a $1.2 billion annual, right, spend, I think the veterinary profession has a clear challenge on how they will lead the producer, all producers in the U.S. To a pathway to be the best in the world. And this clearly is a hurdle to get there. So thank you.
If not, I know the gentlemen are very approachable. If we have any questions while we go enjoy a little refreshment, feel free to question them, or Kim, I'm sure also would, and Henry would also enjoy. So thank you again very much for your attending of this session.